Meido, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Greetings, everyone, from central Pennsylvania. I think it's a little cooler here than it is there. It's about 50 degrees, but it's a cold spring. And I just returned from our Zendo to my house, and we had our morning service, our Sunday service, and everyone was crying. Um, it's an odd coincidence that I'm giving a talk to you on tears because one of our Sangha members gave a talk on reconnecting with her biological father, who she never really knew, and only actually reconnected with him at his funeral. So it was a very profound talk, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Uh, but tonight or today, this afternoon, or for you it's the morning. Um, I don't want to talk about those kinds of tears. Tears simply of loss or uh, tears that are just emotional. Um, I'm finding myself crying a lot these days, and usually with other people present. The other day, I was driving with a friend for lunch, and we were listening to the news on the radio in the car. And of course, there was report on Iran and what was going on there. And I just found myself crying. Um, it seemed very strange um, that listening to the news, that tears would start to flow, especially in relationship to someone beside me who wasn't crying at all, but was just taking in the news of the day. Um, I found myself crying lately at very odd times. Um, for example, last week during our walking meditation, we also walk outdoors on a meditation trail. Um, I was in the back of the line and I was just watching everybody do kinhin. Um, and I just started to cry. Um, Strange in a way. Um, I looked at my cat's whiskers the other day. I started to cry seeing his whiskers. Um, I've cried during the chanting of the Heart Sutra. Um, the other day, there was a turkey vulture, which is actually not a very pleasant bird, actually regurgitates in front of you if it doesn't like you. But the wings of that bird were sort of making a shadow over me as I was working in the garden. And I happened to look up and saw this soaring bird and started to cry. The song of the whippoorwill here at night um, brings tears. So I'm not really a crybaby. So it seemed like what's going on here? What's going on here with me? Um, I thought, well, let's examine this strangeness. It seems strange to me that I would be crying at all these odd times, especially in the presence of other people. Um, so I asked myself, are these tears appropriate? Um, is am I is something else going on here that I'm unaware of? Some deeper experience, some deeper event that I'm I'm crying, but I'm not really being appropriate in my response, that the situation that I'm responding to with tears is not, tears are not really appropriate situation. I trying to kind of over disclose myself? Was I trying to be too forthcoming in personal life? Um, were my tears a burden for others? Uh, were they were they sort of trespassing on other people's uh, consciousness and their emotional life? Um, was I trying to be manipulative in some way? Was I trying to evoke some kind of response from others, maybe sympathy or questioning or wanting a teaching? um, so all of those questions were accompanied my sense of why is this happening so frequently? And it struck me that there is quite a fine line between tears that are self-indulgent, um, merely emotional, um, and sometimes even histrionic, sentimental. Um, and were those the kinds of tears that I was shedding? There's a very fine line between strictly emotional tears and what I'm calling Dharma tears. And what I've kind of come to the conclusion about is that what makes these tears different or maybe a little stranger than purely emotional tears is that they have some wisdom in them. They're not purely um, sensual or purely emotional. Um, and so I've kind of tried to identify 5 different kinds of Dharma tears, which have some wisdom in them, and thus are appropriate to our practice. And so I'll enumerate those 5 kinds of Dharma tears, and I'm sure that you might be able to come up with others or variations on the ones that I'm identifying. So the first one is tears of empathy. Um, those are tears that really connect us with others, and sometimes others that we're not even aware of, or that we don't really have a strong connection with. But even animals or trees or birds, or this sense of feeling as if their pain is our pain. It's not the kind of empathy which is, I'm feeling what you're feeling, which actually, I think, inhibits us in taking a skillful action, taking a compassionate action. So what I mean by empathy is as if the pain were yours, not literally that you are feeling exactly what they're feeling, because that can be paralyzing. So that's the first kind of Dharma tear that I've identified. The second would be tears of helplessness. Um, yeah, that happens a lot for me. Um, it's a kind of tears of which arise out of, you might say, the ungovernability of dukkha. that we really cannot control suffering. And it's something that we can't manage most of the time because it's a fact of our life. So there's a sense of recognizing the centrality of dukkha, First Noble Truth. It's a recognition that dukkha is ungovernable, that we have no control over it, and that as long as there's human life, there's going to be life at all, there's going to be suffering. So that those tears are tears of recognition of a truth. And so I'm calling them tears of helplessness. And then the third is tears of relief. You know, sometimes when you, I know, well, I'll talk about myself. Sometimes when I actually come home after a lot of socializing or difficult experience, and I step foot at home, I realize I'm here. I'm here in my place. And there's a form of relief when you come into alignment with who you are and what your place in life is. And I would extrapolate that to the finding of this path. For me, it has been a deep, tremendous relief to have found the Buddha way. And even Buddha recognized this, that it's rare, first of all, to be born a human being, and then to hear the Buddha teachings. So this sense of relief, I found meaning. I found my way. I found my home. And so there's that crying of gratitude, in a way, of having found something so profound and so meaningful. And then the fourth Dharma tear is what I'm calling the tears of moral elevation. So I find myself sometimes responding with tears when I witness some beautiful deed that somebody has performed. Just recently, I am having some dental work done, and it's a new dentist, and the dental hygienist doesn't know me, and she was so incredibly caring and comforting. I mean, a lot of people don't like to go to the dentist. I'm not one of those people who are the dentist. But I'm so moved by the fact that she offered her care so indiscriminately, you know, and it was genuine. It wasn't, it didn't feel like it was just a part of her job or mechanical. So when somebody performs some morally beautiful deed, kindness, helpfulness, it's very moving because it indicates what human beings are capable of. And we've heard many stories about heroic action, and not only in the big dramatic form, but also in small deeds like this hygienist. And I'm sure you can identify people in your life who just were good, you know, who who had a good heart and who were genuinely helpful, bodhisattvas, the bodhisattvas that are kind of all around us, and sometimes we don't even recognize them, but there they are, and they're there to help. And so when somebody performs as a bodhisattva, it's very moving. And there's an expression of an understanding of our interconnectedness and our need to be there for each other, to help each other. And that's what the bodhisattva can often evoke, that kind of response. And the fifth Dharma tier is tears of response to beauty. Here in Pennsylvania, we're just in the beginnings of the spring season, and I mean, I can walk down the meditation trail and see a white peony just beginning to open, and it's, oh my gosh, what incredible beauty. It's inexpressible. And it feels so beyond words that all that can happen is this tear. I have to also mention, when we come upon art, I remember going to an exhibit by a collage artist named Kurt Schwitters at Princeton, and I came upon a strange framed item, and the item in the frame was a rag from Kurt Schwitters' studio. And that rag that he had sort of selected out to exhibit had all of the texture and color, the subtlety of color, that sort of spoke of his art generally, that he took this rag from his studio and saw the beauty in it and exhibited it, framed it. And I just stood there, just crying. Again, just that sense of transcendence, of moving beyond sort of just the surface of things and seeing more deeply into the isness of life. And so there's more than just a beautiful picture there. There's wisdom there. He deliberately took that rag and framed it to express something that was beyond just a pretty picture. So those are the 5 Dharma tiers that I've identified. And I wanted to select a couple with examples. I've given a few examples, but the tiers of empathy, we all kind of know, are the tiers of Avalokiteshvara. And this is from some writing on Avalokiteshvara's tears. In one legend, Avalokiteshvara, the infinite bodhisattva of compassion, was so moved by the world's suffering that he cried. His heart became heavy by seeing the great sufferings of life and death. His tears, containing deep regret, flowed onto the ground, leaving a still lake. And from the depths of this serene pool, a lotus flower bloomed, and its petals unfurled to reveal the radiant Tara. So this is the legend in which green Tara, this female manifestation of divine love and mercy, was born from Avalokiteshvara's tear. What a beautiful image. So that tear is that tear produced this divine helper. And also the lotus flower is a traditional symbol of purity and enlightenment, arising from the tears of compassion. So I thought it was interesting that that green Tara was born out of this empathy that Avalokiteshvara had, and that green Tara became a skillful means for the tear contained the skillful means, green Tara, to be helpful. I want to also offer a quote from Goethe. This is from Goethe. Only the words break the silence. All other sounds have ceased. If I were silent, I'd hear nothing. But if I were silent, the other sounds would start again, those to which the words have made me deaf, or which have really ceased. But I am silent. It sometimes happens. No, never, not 1 second. I weep too, without interruption. It's an unbroken flow of words and tears, with no pause for reflection. But I speak softer every year, a little softer. Perhaps slower too, every year a little slower. Perhaps it is hard for me to judge. If so, the pauses would be longer between the words, the sentences, the syllables, the tears. I confuse them, words and tears. My words are my tears, my eyes, my mouth. So when there's this sense of helplessness, we reach for something. In Goethe's case, words. In fact, I'm remembering that the title of Jean-Paul Sartre's autobiography is Words. Goethe says, my words are my tears. So those tears, in response to helplessness, we reach for a teaching. We reach in the face of silence, of helplessness, of the muteness of the world. We speak. And the tears are transmuted, are transformed into words. And thus the tears have wisdom in them. They're not just emotional. So the words become the embodiment of the tears, the helplessness. And finally, I'm sure some of you know this from Dogen. Once when I was in Song, China, practicing on a long sitting platform, I observed the monks around me. At the beginning of Zazen in the morning, they would hold up their kashayas, place them on their heads, and chant a verse quietly with palms together. Great is the robe of liberation, the robe beyond form, the field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching to awaken countless beings. Dogen says, this was the first time I had seen the kashaya held up in this way, and I rejoiced, tears wetting the collar of my robe. Although I had read this verse of veneration for the kashaya in the Agama Sutra, I had not known the procedure. Now I saw it with my own eyes. In my joy, I also felt sorry that there had been no master to teach this to me and no good friend to recommend it in Japan. Then I he says, if I had stayed in my land, how could I have sat side by side with the monks who had received and were wearing the Buddha robe? My sadness and joy brought endless tears. Then I made a vow to myself, however unsuited I may be, I will become an authentic holder of the Buddha Dharma, receiving authentic transmission of the true Dharma, and with compassion show the Buddha's ancestors authentically transmitted Dharma robes to those in my land. He says, my sadness and joy brought endless tears. This is Dogen. And I love the image of this wet, what does he say? Wetting the collar of my robe. I can, this is just a lovely image that there's his tears wet the collar of his robe. And so these tears are both joy and sadness. The joy, you could say, for me, these are tears of moral elevation, where you're seeing the monks venerating the robe, and it is uplifting, it's inspiring, it's morally and energizing. And so he said he saw it with his own eyes and brought tears of sadness and joy. So they're different kind of tears than just emotional tears. So I've talked about these three, giving a little bit more explanation about three of these, what I'm calling Dharma tears. So it occurred to me, did Buddha ever cry? Did he ever mourn? Certainly, he was deeply aware of dukkha, of the suffering of the world. I kind of want my Buddha to cry. I want my Buddha to be flesh and blood, not merely a stone Buddha. But of course, in our practice, there's a kind of emphasis on tranquility and equanimity, and not a lot of encouragement of strong emotions or perhaps any emotions. But I'm suggesting here that that in a way, much as with Goethe, Buddha's words were his tears. That when he awakened, and he awakened with this response to the suffering that he saw in the world, and actually wanted to retreat, thinking that perhaps nobody would really respond or understand the teachings. But this great compassion in him led him to teach, to put his teaching into words. So again, our Buddha did cry, but his words are his tears. And so I want to end with another kind of crying that is expressed in a poem by Tennessee Williams. And the poem is called Your Blinded Hand. Suppose that everything that greens and grows should blacken in one moment, flower and branch. I think that I should find your blinded hand. Suppose that your cry and mine were lost among numberless cries in a city of fire, when the earth is afire. I must still believe that somehow I would find your blinded hand. Through flames everywhere, consuming earth and air, I must believe that somehow, if only one moment were offered, I would find your hand. I know, as of course you know, the immeasurable wilderness that would exist in the moment of fire. But I would hear your cry, and you hear mine, and each of us would find the other's hand. We know that it might not be so. For this quiet moment, if only for this moment, and against all reason, let us believe and believe in our hearts that somehow it would be so. I'd hear your cry, you mine, and each of us would find a blinded hand. This is another kind of cry. It's a cry for connection, which is it's a different kind of cry. It's a Dharma cry, but so deeply needed right now. To cry out for a hand to connect. And so I think this is our great task as Dharma practitioners and as Sangha members, to reach out, to cry out for one another, and to make that deep connection that only warm hand to warm hand can actually make. So thank you very much. And happy to hear your responses, your questions, anything you would like to share. I will leave it up to you to call on people. Or...
Thank you, Meido. I'll see if I'm muted here. I'm not. I'll kind of facilitate here and call on people. So we usually take a deep breath before we jump in to absorb, and there was a lot to absorb today, and thank you for that. So let's take a deep breath here. And anybody that feels like they'd like to speak or comment or ask a question, just give me a nod and we'll sort of manage it that way.
In our service this morning, we chanted the Enmei Juko Kanon Gyo canon, she who hears the cries of the world. So that's the cry that resonates with me. So any response to the Enmei Juko Kanon?
Yeah. Kanji Zaibo Sagyo Jin Hanya Hara Mitaji. Yes. So this evokes the image of Kuan Yin, Kanan, Avalokiteshvara, with all those tools, hands full of tools, skillful means. So it's, again, calling out. Sometimes I actually think that the Heart Sutra, as well as many of the sutras that we chant, are actually cries for help. They're almost like prayers. And so very much so, we're calling on Avalokiteshvara to find or help us find the skillful means to relieve suffering. So it's a call that has not only compassion in it, but also wisdom, because it involves skillful means. It involves being clear as to what the suffering is and what is needed to respond. So thank you for bringing that up.
Hi, I'm Erin. This is interesting that this has come up this week for me because
I can't hear.
Oh, can you hear me?
Just,
now I can.
Project a little more, yeah.
It's interesting that this topic came up for me too this week because I've been crying a lot. and often I notice that that's not just for me, but when I speak to it with other people, that it's such a difficult energy. That's the language I would use to allow just to be and happen. That so often I want to tamp that down. It feels very big. Sometimes it will flow more freely than others. Often that's actually when if it's only even one other person, they're crying too. It's almost like it gives you permission, to release that. But I find it so fascinating that even after all this time, if I try to suppress just that, the energy of that wanting to move through me, it will just wreck my whole day. And then when I finally allow myself to release it, that actually not only is there an energetic relief, but that is when the wisdom comes in. That suppression, I mean, I think it can happen. It's not an either or, it's an and. So that kind of wisdom could happen. I just let myself cry too. But most often it's when I'm tampering it down. And I think what I'm curious about is, or what I'm maybe even grappling a bit with, is moving this as I'm listening to this, and then when I've gone into teachings too, around keeping things in my head rather than just listening to my body and letting it move through, and how that unto itself brings a gift with it, if that makes sense. Instead of me kind of trying to figure out what it's coming from, because that's usually what keeps me suppressing it. like I don't want to look at this, or whatever that is. Yeah, and kind of maybe I'm feeling a little like and no man's land around how these teachings, which I find very rich, like what you've brought up, how to kind of connect that so I don't get too in my head with it. Where it also just sometimes is what I would maybe even say is the body's wisdom, just moving something through, and then something takes rise from there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. You know, we grow up being told, you know, be a big girl or be a big boy, and if you're going to cry, go to your room. Or, you know, that's not it's not something that's encouraged for adults in particular. And certainly even children are often criticized or judged or called crybabies. And this emotional release is usually quite blocked, and can't be discharged. But that's, you know, that's an emotional, that's pretty purely emotional. But I suspect that that's could be a foundation for other kinds of tears, for other kinds of crying. So yeah, I mean, that's a whole other approach, you know, to allow these emotional responses to flow freely through the body. Um, and that, I'm sure that has an effect on other forms of crying, of tears. So,
Yeah,
you know,
certainly, because like that spontaneous, that deep beauty, when I come into contact with deep beauty, I don't want to suppress that.
right.
I should say there's that I part of me doesn't try to suppress that. So I'm just kind of dancing. It's interesting what you're speaking to, you know, how that other component, more again, I just term it, it's like an energy that just needs to move through, that too has its wisdom. But it is fascinating to me how difficult that is compared to seeing something soar in the sky and just, you know, having that moment where you're moved to tears, or even with suffering.
Yeah. I think I suppose it's possible. There's certainly a spontaneity involved in, but many of us just are not spontaneous. You know, we're very controlled. You know, we really often don't allow ourselves to be helpless in the face of life. We're usually in the mode of mastery and control of things. So, you know, perhaps we can learn, maybe our practice, because it's so focused on being with what is, being fully present, can encourage spontaneity, can help us learn how to respond to things intuitively as well as spontaneously. So I think our practice may have a positive effect on our ability to just be with what is as it arises, and not put our concepts and our stories and our judgments on, oh, is it, as I asked, is it appropriate for me to cry now? Or, you know, am I trying to be manipulative? And immediately, you know, the mind kicks in and starts questioning and transforming what would be a beautiful, spontaneous response what will that person think of me? Or am I, am I making a fool of myself? That kind of thing. So I think our practice could go a long way in helping us let go of those constraints. Thank you.
Yeah, the word spontaneous that's something I'm going to sit with. Thank you.
Bill?
Hi, on the line with you. Can you hear me?
I can't hear.
Bill, yeah, speak up just a bit if you can, Bill.
Not much voice, but I'll give it a shot. And it'll go away soon, so I'll make this brief.
I can't hear.
Okay.
We're going to bring him, he's bringing himself closer to the speaker.
Good.
Thank you, Bill.
The Heart Sutra starts with Guan Shiren, and there are two names for Guan Shiren. One is the one we read in the end, and what's the rest of that? And the one we recited today. One is Guan. Guan is to observe, and it doesn't hold that thought for a minute. It's to observe. And I'll speak louder. Avalokiteshvara, he who looks down and sees the cries of the world, is represented by two wings of a bird, wisdom and compassion. So Guan is to observe with compassion. It has a lot of ramifications. So I wonder if you could expand on that.
Yeah, and I think the term Dharma Tear kind of brings those two together. And obviously compassion without wisdom is just pity, is just sentimentalism. It's just like the Hallmark version of compassion. That's why I use the word empathy. Compassion is kind of a little bit overused, but I like, in our practice we call it great compassion. Great compassion. That's different from like ordinary compassion. It's great because it has to meet great suffering. So that is, as I indicated before, compassion, there's a very thin line between a sentimental compassion and great compassion. And we really have to patrol that line and in our practice. And that's where wisdom comes in. That without clarity, without the teachings, without the skillful means, we don't have great compassion. We just have sentimentalism or pity. And similarly, if all we have is a sort of intellectual or rational understanding of what somebody's going through. Okay, so like a very business-like approach. You could even say, if it's strictly therapeutic, that is as if you're sitting in a psychiatrist's office, and they are diagnosing you. There's no impetus there for action. And so wisdom without compassion is sterile. It doesn't have consequence. It's sort of just sits there as an analysis of something. So the two are absolutely necessary in a skillful response. The clarity that helps, the wisdom that helps you understand what is actually happening and how best to help. And then the compassion, the not this just emotional, but the empathic connection with the suffering. So that, yeah, those are the two wings that enable us to fly. Thank you for that. I hope that responds to your point.
There were ideas that were going through my mind when you were talking about parts of this. And I remember one of my professors once saying, the person who has the most pain at any one time is Avalokiteshvara.
Yeah.
And that was a shock to a lot of people. Oh no, he's wise. He understands the cause of suffering. So how could he suffer so grievously? But when you say Lokita in Avalokita Ishvara, means the world. You're looking at the cries of the entire world one time, and he's practicing Prajnaparamita at that time. The wisdom.
Yeah. And that tear, Avalokiteshvara's tear, produces green Tara, which is all of these arms and hands with the tools of skillful means. So it's not just feeling all the suffering, it's also being available to help relieve the suffering. We don't want to forget all the hands and tools that Avalokiteshvara has at his disposal.
It's more than a Hallmark card.
Right.
Thank you, Bill. I think we might have time for one more quick question or comment, but it's been such a rich, full morning for us here. We're not crying, but we are smiling and very grateful to you, Meido. Does anybody have a parting comment or thought before we?
I have one.
Yes, Deidre?
Okay, so I'm Deidre, and I've been doing a lot of tears. And the one that you talked about is the connection. My husband passed recently, and so listening to this, is there separation between emotional and what you call the Dharma? I'm very new to the Zen practice. I've only recently joined because I'm looking for connection. And I find this group what I need at the moment. And when you talk about transformation, I'm finding words. I've been writing some poetry that's coming from deep within me, transforming my pain into words and sharing them with family and close friends. and they seem to be rather transcendent, that they have almost a universal connection with people that they can relate to. So I feel like I'm on a journey, and it's a difficult one, but it's exposing me to many, many experiences I've never had before, and I tend to be rather spontaneous in my days, just what comes up. So I guess what I'm listening to all of this is bringing up the difference or that connection, and one leading to the other between the emotional and wisdom that perhaps is coming out of it. So
Beautiful. I wish you all the best luck on your journey. And this is really, for me, our practice is getting in touch with the heart. So never lose that. Yeah, it's wonderful to be a beginner. All of that freshness, and hope, that you found. This is tears of relief. I found a group. I found a sangha. I'm very moved by finally finding a home, finding a path. So, congratulations. I wish you all the best of luck.
thank you.
And thank you all for listening. This is kind of a strange talk, but I hope it was worth your time.
Really wonderful morning for us. And I hadn't heard a presentation like this before. This is a way of expressing the Dharma in your own, how it's arising in your life. And really grateful for your honesty and vulnerability. And it was just a great morning for us. Thank you, Meido.
Thank you for inviting me.
All
And
right.
of course, there's Dharma laughter too. So maybe that's
Next talk.
next talk.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Have a great Memorial Day.
Thank you. You too. All of you.